Have you ever had somebody change their mind not because you gave them more facts, but because you told them a story? We're going to talk today about how storytelling is a leverage factor for negotiation. Welcome to How to Get What You Want. This podcast is for driven women ready to claim their goals and navigate their careers with clarity and confidence. Join me as we explore real stories, tools, and strategies to help you steer your career exactly where you want to go. Let's get started on helping you get what you want. Hey, welcome. I'm Susie. I am so happy that you made the choice to join me today. I love this topic of storytelling, and I hear so often from a leadership perspective the business storytelling. Telling stories is so powerful in connecting us, and it's so true, and it's also true in negotiation, in difficult conversations. And what I find when I meet with people is that people understand that to be true, but they don't know how. And when they try, they often don't do it well. But storytelling can make the difference. And in fact, it's the emotion that brings people together. It's that connection that builds trust. And that doesn't come from data. That comes from making people feel that they're in the story or helping them understand how other people have already gone down the path or the journey that they're about to go down. It helps people understand the context and put themselves in that. And that's so powerful. In fact, Harvard says that people are 22 times more likely to remember a story than a fact. Even a really important fact, people remember stories. And this is so true. I heard this recently when somebody was telling me about a keynote speaker that they had heard years ago. And they didn't remember the topic, they didn't remember any of the details, but they could tell the story that that person, that stranger told them. And they told me the story because that story had an impact on them. And people, as Harvard said, are 20 times more likely to remember that story because there's an emotional feeling around it. It's because people put themselves in it. In fact, a neuroscientist, his name is Paul Zak, found that stories with emotional content activate more areas of your brain than data alone. So we mirror what we hear, we feel what the storyteller feels. That's why it's so important. That's why people that are good speakers make that connection through the stories that they tell. And they do it in a way that helps that listener come in. And it's so important to persuasion because that makes that connection that helps people understand the journey. And so it's a really important thing to consider the storytelling and how to leverage it in every conversation, any high stakes situation. It's good to practice it even when it's a low stakes situation. And I'll give you ways to do that. And it's an important factor when you get really good at it. It just becomes this natural way of helping people see the world from your perspective, help them understand the emotional journey so that they can benefit from that beforehand. It's like living vicariously through somebody else. It's helping somebody else understand. Oh, it's so powerful. It's also really hard to put it into words why it's so impactful because it's such a skill that is something that makes people understand. It's almost like this is what's coming to mind for me is it's almost like when you think about a drawing and how when it's colored in, it just comes to life. Or when there's depth that's put to it, it just helps the other person see, the vision of the artist. It's explaining what the intent was. It's helping the other person have more color or more context to what they're going to face or how they need to see it. And persuasion is really a piece of that. And this was a really uncomfortable situation for me early on in my career. I remember there was a guy, he was an executive, a man, an executive very senior to me. He was probably at the time a few levels above me. And I was just taking over accounts, and we had one client that wasn't happy about a charge that we gave them. It was in the contract. It was really black and white. It was just a service fee that we paid, and they were still just uncomfortable with it. It was a couple $1,000s a month. And so we were walking to the meeting. We were walking down the hall, and I remember, I'll never forget, Tom said, "We just need to tell the story to them. We need to build the story so they understand." And the first thing that came to mind when he said that is, we're just going to lie to them. We're going to manipulate them by telling them a story. The services that they were not understanding was to take a downlink of a video signal and moving it through our operation. And the reason I wanted to explain that was because there wasn't direct costs associated to it. There wasn't like a dedicated piece of equipment that was associated to them that they were amortizing over a certain amount of time, that was the math equation for that fee. But it was something that we were doing that was a part of the overall operation. So while his story helped the customer to understand the operational impact of that to our business, he really told the story to help them understand it in a way that they could make sense of it. At the end of the day, they needed to make sense of it. And then what that equated to is then they had a story that they could tell internally to tell their CFO, to tell their executives, well, this is why. And this is how it's built. Yes, it's not what we assumed, that it was associated to something that we had purchased and that is a part of the service, but it made sense. His story made sense. It took me some time to really appreciate the power of that. And they were so satisfied, never questioned it again. It really worked. And that helped me understand how storytelling has such an impact. I also think about, just recently, I have a big client who sometimes things get escalated to her. She had a customer, that multi-million dollar customer, very upset. And so she was brought into the conversation, and she did some really thinking about, looked at the old emails, looked at the transcripts from the conversation so she could get a sense of the context of the situation and why the customer was feeling so irate. And once she got him settled down, she helped him understand that she was going to take a different approach. She used storytelling to help him understand the value. What the disconnect was he didn't feel the trust from the other side, but he also didn't understand. He thought he knew the value of their services, and she realized that he didn't understand it beyond what he had read online. He didn't understand or have the context to how other clients that she could tell a very strong story around, not just used their services for what was advertised, but she was able to show the impact by telling a story of another client in a really non-defensive way, not in a way that felt like it was, I'm trying to persuade you, but just to understand. She said something like, "Let me tell you a little bit about another one of my clients that looks a lot like you. They had some of the same concerns. They looked at it and they knew that the value of our service was X, Y, and Z. But what they didn't realize was that over time, they were able to capitalize on our services by," and she added in some additional context, by telling the story of that other client and how he became a superstar because of the leveraging the services that they provided. And that gave some color to what they were selling. She did have to diffuse him. I don't want to take that away. An irate customer, it's not just you tell a story and boom, bang, they feel really happy about it. It's about getting that emotional intelligence to get them in a place where they're ready for that story. And then she was able to do it in a way that allowed him to broaden his perspective. That story helped him see that it went beyond what he thought in the homework that he had done that they could provide. So storytelling is really powerful. And it's funny because I've worked with a lot of senior teams around storytelling, and have given them examples and told stories about how I have learned to relate my professional journey when I'm on the stage or I'm talking to a team and facilitating, giving the application of the learnings that I'm trying to really land in the room through the stories that I've lived. Even talking to this team about this, it was funny when they put it into practice and seeing what they did. People sometimes want to retell the story from the outside. They want to just give the facts. But the true storytelling, doing it in a way that brings that other person to the here and now, to say, "Oh gosh, I remember when, and this is how it felt for me. These were the expectations I had, and I didn't realize that this was what was gonna happen to me, and this was the change." When you put people in that moment, instead of being a fact finder or a data look backer, you know, in the '80s, when I went to high school, I knew 12 people, and I learned how to persuade them by making sure that every day I gave them a prompt to think about how we were gonna be better at the challenges that we faced. See, that is like looking back and giving a view from the outside. Instead, when you go into that, gosh, it's been a long time since I was in high school, but I realize now that I really persuaded back then. I remember wanting to motivate the people around me, and I didn't really know how. And I remember feeling really excited about having a prompt that I could think about the challenge that I faced. And it was so impactful to me that I started doing it for the friends around me. And they started realizing that that was so powerful. See, in that moment, I'm saying I'm bringing you in into that moment. You can even feel like the emotions that I'm reliving. And then that helps you come into that story. Storytelling is really powerful. It feels like it should be really simple, like, we've always learned to tell stories or we believe that we're good storytellers, but certainly know people that are better at it than others. It's not something you should just assume that you just tell a story and you're really good at it. You think about how to do it in a good way. So let me tell you some ways to think about how to integrate storytelling in every day with your colleague, with your boss, with a customer. We often think about it in a sales perspective, but how do you bring that nuance in a way that they can understand it from your perspective? So pull them into the room. Like I said with that high school example, don't tell it from a faraway perspective. Think about yourself living it in that moment. And even describe the things around you, the feelings that you had, the transformation that you made. When you paint that picture from the inside, you help them see it. So think about phrases like, imagine when I was that VP, I had to be really thoughtful about what my next steps were. Or picture yourself in that moment so that you can be able to describe what you see around you, what you felt, how you were moving through it. Practice that with people that you know, and it doesn't have to be this elaborate way of recounting that experience, but think about and really work on making that powerfully told in a way that you bring in the most important aspects. The second tip is really understanding the backstory of the value. Help them understand that insight that you gained, that aha moment. Tell them that moment where when I saw those people in high school have the same experience as I did, I knew that giving them that tool was going to be transformational for them. So help the person see what that impact was. Help them understand the investment behind what they're buying or what that outcome for them could be. The third tip is to really think about replacing bullet points with emotional moments. So whether it is a deck or you're just going in and presenting data, you could still present that data, but how do you make it, bring it to life? So instead of saying something like, this platform is scalable because you could add in this amount of memory and these additional attributes. I don't even know what that might be. Say those facts, but say, one of our customers was able to, when they put this into practice, they decreased their downtime by X amount. And they were surprised by that. And they were so excited about being able to be online more often. That drove customer satisfaction and built trust for their clients. So those bullet points become an emotional moment where people can understand the impact that it has. And it doesn't have to be long. That's what's so crazy, is that it can be a few sentences. You don't need to make it this long movie monologue. You don't need to explain, and Bob was wearing a pink jacket that stuck out and people remembered. Some of those things are good moments to just really draw the other person in and help them really see it. Those visualizations are really powerful, but a story can be really punchy. A few examples I pulled just to give you some ideas. Let's say your boss asks why your team needs an extra week on a project. Instead of listing it, say, last Thursday, one of our clients changed our entire onboarding process. We dropped everything to redesign the training document so that they could go live on time. That pivot earned us the thank you note from their COO. And now we just need time to regroup to do the rest of what's right for the client. So instead of saying, these are the tasks that we have to get, help your boss understand this is why we need more time to get this done. So it's important to think about, how can you tie this in to understand your perspective? And sometimes it's just, in that example, relaying the why around why we need more time. What is that circumstance that you can help them understand this is the impact that it had? So good, so important. And in fact, I'm putting together a bonus 5 different stories that you can apply in different situations, which will be in the show notes. And it will give you a template to start thinking about and envisioning how you can incorporate storytelling in all aspects of your role with your partner, in your everyday, even in retail, when you're helping that other person understand why it's important that you get the discount, or they add something to your order, using these moments in a way to help them understand your context, help them understand the reason why, pull in the story for them to understand. So think about how you can use this. How can you use it logically so that you get the nod from the other person that's like, oh, yeah, I understand. That helps you make that emotional connection to them, and it helps them have that confidence to move forward. And that's why it's persuasive. It helps them see themselves, but you're also building that trust between you and them. And it makes them go, all right, I can see that future. You gave me more context to understand that. So, my mission for you is to consider where you can start incorporating storytelling and see what impact it has. Pick one time in the next week that you're going to take a story from your recent past, your past, that can help the other person understand and make an aha, so that they can move forward, whether it's being a part of your project, getting buy-in for something that you're doing. Think about how you can use storytelling to persuade, and don't look at persuasion as something that's manipulative. It's a value to the other person that you're giving them some additional context to help them make a decision that will be valuable to them. So reframe that for yourself as well. I really appreciate this space to explore this idea of storytelling, because it allowed me to reinforce what I already know. And it's actually made me energized to think about how I can incorporate more storytelling in what I'm doing and who I'm facing every day. Maybe even with my granddaughter. Maybe that can be the place where I can teach a 2-year-old to be motivated to get done what I want her to do. I'm going to try that when she picks up today after she's here. I would love for you to reach out to me and let me know if this landed for you or how it landed for you and how you're using storytelling to make a bigger impact to bring value to the people around you. Look at it that way. Feel free to forward this on to somebody that needs to hear this message, that could benefit from this. Help them become a better storyteller as well. And if somebody did that for you, pass it on, and so on and so on. And if you want to reach out to me, head over to negotiationlove.com. You can sign up for my newsletter where I even go a little deeper on some of these concepts on how to adopt a negotiator mindset to get what you want. And remember that negotiation is more than a skill. It truly is a mindset. Until next time, I'm Susie. I'm glad you were here.